Tech giants could face billions of pounds in fines for failing to tackle disinformation under proposed Australian laws, which a watchdog on Monday said would bring mandatory standards to the little regulated sector. But many are concerned with what it could mean for freedom of speech. Now, who else could I ask to talk about this topic? None other than Rebel News' Ezra Levant. Ezra, I'm so glad you're in the UK and to join me in the studio. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. And freedom of speech is the fundamental freedom, the strategic freedom upon which all the other freedoms are based.
Absolutely. And the last time I saw you, I think we were both quizzing Greta Thunberg for that 20-minute Q&A session that we had with her. She had nothing to say whatsoever. However,
I saw her that she went to Ukraine to give some strategic advice to President Zelensky.
Advice based on what? I mean, it's all kicking off where you are in Canada. The C-18 bill, as I understand it, is the government trying to tax Facebook and Google specifically.
Just for having links.
Right.
Like, it's not like they're taking news stories and republishing them. The internet is based on links. Companies love links. That's why they advertise on Facebook and Google. They post things on Facebook and Google. Justin Trudeau commanded Facebook, Instagram, Google to pay money to any news organization that they linked to without limit. And those companies said, look, we're happy to chip in, but we're not going to pay for links. So yesterday they turned off the news. They literally turned off the news in Canada.
Which means that Google are no longer sharing links to Canadian news sites.
Yeah, so it's hurting the news companies.
But it's hurting Canadians' access to freedom of the press as well. This is absolutely bonkers. And then likewise, you say you've looked at the policies in Canada, UK, Ireland, the US, Germany, New Zealand, and Australia has the worst protocol in terms
and it's bad news everywhere. But let me just talk a little bit about Australia. I'm just looking at my notes here. It's called the Misinformation and Disinformation Bill. But of course, one man's misinformation is another man's opinion. Yeah. We have a clash of ideas, and the viewer gets to choose, not the government. Here's some of the crazy stuff. This is what they call online harm. Not real violence, but this is one of the harms. You're not even going to believe this. If a posting does harm to the Australian environment, does economic or financial harm to Australians, by the way, there's special exemptions for the mainstream media. Right. If you are an official approved government source, you're exempt from this misinformation and disinformation law.
So let's put this into practicality. For example, another pandemic, so-called pandemic hits. The mainstream media can say whatever they like, but small outlets and individuals will be censored.
That's right, and there's no religious exemption either. So what a pastor says, if his church service is streamed on Facebook or YouTube, as many are, that is covered by this law. There's no religious exemption.
Which means that they could say, if I put my sermon online, they could say my sermon is harmful to the LGBT community because I'm preaching that marriage is between one man and one woman. Therefore, they could take me down.
Yeah, and we've seen laws in Scotland, in Ireland, being proposed that say if you have a meme, like a funny, quirky joke, even if it's in your email or if it's in an old social media post, if it could cause offense, likely to, in the future, to cause offense, that in itself is against the law. No one has to actually be offended.
Oh my goodness.
It just could, future tense, be an offense to someone's dignity. What does that mean?
So it's worse than something being offensive. It's something potentially being offensive.
Yeah, a future crime, like that movie Minority Report, where they would say, well, you didn't do anything yet, but we really know you're going to. That's worse than Orwellian. And these are happening all across the Anglosphere, including here in the UK. And this is the crucible of free speech. And I hate
We just spoke to a teacher called Ben who got fired because they said at some point in the future he could teach something that could offend people.
And look at how they enforce that against him and against the pastor you just had on. Would they do that against a Muslim preacher? Maybe one day, but they're going after Christians first. In Canada, during the lockdowns, they jailed Christian pastors for keeping their churches open. No other faith. I really feel like they're a combination of the lockdowns and the intolerance for conservative or Christian views is spreading across the Anglosphere.
And this is not a biased view. You're not a Christian yourself.
No, I'm Jewish, but I understand, maybe because I'm Jewish, that you need that freedom of speech, because with it you can fight for your other freedoms. And one of the first things they do in tyranny is take away your right to talk back.
Absolutely.
And what use is an election if there's no free speech? What use is freedom of association if there's no free speech? It is the freedom upon which the others are based.
Ezra, it's almost as if they want to get rid of democracy somehow.
Well, you're fighting back. I love it.
Check out Ezra Levant's Democracy Fund as well over there at Rebel News. Thank you so much for joining me today.